Imagine walking into a giant stone building 2,000 years ago. Outside it's freezing, wind cutting through the streets. But the moment you step inside, the floor beneath your feet is warm. Not just warm, heated. The air is thick with steam, the walls are hot to the touch, and dozens of Romans are casually bathing like this is the most normal thing in the world. No electricity, no boilers, no modern plumbing, just stone, fire, and pure engineering genius. Here's the part nobody tells you. The entire room is heated from under the floor. The Romans built a system so efficient that it could warm massive bath complexes, libraries, and villas, using nothing but wood fires and clever airflow. And what's wild is that the basic physics behind this 2,000-year-old system could still heat homes during modern blackouts or energy collapse. So the real question is, how did people without electricity manage to build one of the most advanced heating systems in human history? And more importantly, why did we forget how powerful this idea really is? The secret system was called the Hypocaust, and the idea was almost deceptively simple. Instead of heating the air directly like a fireplace does, the Romans heated the structure of the building itself. Under the stone floors of bathhouses, workers built hundreds of small brick pillars called pilae. These pillars held the floor slightly above the ground, creating a hidden cavity beneath the entire room. On one side of the building sat a massive furnace called the praefurnium. Slaves or workers constantly fed wood into this furnace, producing intense heat and hot gases. Now here's where the genius comes in. Instead of letting that heat escape into the air, the Romans forced it underneath the raised floor. Hot air traveled through the entire network of pillars like a giant underground radiator. The stone floor slowly absorbed the heat and then released it evenly into the room above. No smoke inside, no dangerous flames in the room, just smooth, radiant warmth rising from beneath your feet. But the floor wasn't the only thing heating up. The Romans understood something about airflow that many people even today overlook. They built hollow clay tubes called tubuli inside the walls. As the hot air from the furnace moved under the floor, it didn't just stop there. It continued rising upward through these wall channels. That meant the walls themselves became part of the heating system. Think about that for a second. The entire room was essentially a giant radiator. Heat moved from the furnace, under the floor, through the walls, and finally escaped through vents in the roof. This created a natural convection loop where hot air constantly circulated without any fans or electricity. The result was stable, comfortable warmth across enormous spaces. And because the heat came from radiant surfaces rather than direct flames, the rooms felt luxurious rather than smoky or dry. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Roman bathhouses weren't just warm rooms. They were carefully engineered temperature zones. First you'd enter the frigidarium, the cold room, then the tepidarium, a warm transition space, and finally the caldarium, the hot steam bath where temperatures could reach levels similar to modern saunas. The Hypocaust system allowed engineers to control these environments simply by adjusting how close each room was to the furnace. Rooms closest to the fire became extremely hot. Rooms farther away stayed warm but comfortable. No thermostats, no electronics, just clever architecture and physics. And because stone stores heat incredibly well, these rooms stayed warm for hours even if the fire weakened. The building itself acted like a massive thermal battery. This is where survival science quietly sneaks into the story. Heating air directly, like modern heaters do, is actually one of the least efficient ways to stay warm. Warm air rises and escapes quickly. Radiant heat, however, warms objects and bodies directly. That's exactly what the Hypocaust system did. The floor, the walls, even the benches became warm surfaces radiating heat outward. If you've ever stood on a heated floor in winter, you know the feeling instantly. The warmth doesn't blast at you, it surrounds you. This principle is still used today in high-efficiency radiant floor heating systems. In other words, modern engineers essentially reinvented something the Romans mastered 2 millennia ago. But building a hypocaust wasn't easy. It required incredible precision. The brick pillars had to be perfectly spaced so the floor above wouldn't collapse under the weight of heavy stone slabs and crowds of people. The furnace had to produce consistent heat for hours, sometimes days. And airflow needed to be carefully managed so smoke traveled through the system without leaking into living spaces. Roman engineers solved this with carefully angled flues and exhaust vents that pulled gases upward like a chimney. It was a delicate balance between fire, air pressure, and stone architecture. And when it worked correctly, entire bath complexes the size of modern shopping malls could stay warm even during cold winters. And here's the part that feels almost eerie today. The Hypocaust system didn't just heat baths. Wealthy Romans installed smaller versions in their homes. Imagine living in ancient times, yet waking up in a villa where the marble floor beneath your feet is already warm before sunrise. The furnace workers would start the fire early in the morning, and by the time the household woke up, the entire structure was quietly radiating heat. No smoke-filled rooms, no piles of ash in the living space, just silent warmth stored inside stone. For a civilization without electricity, that level of comfort was extraordinary. What's fascinating is that this technology slowly disappeared after the fall of the Roman Empire. Maintaining high-cost systems required skilled builders, constant labor, and a steady supply of fuel. When infrastructure collapsed, many regions simply couldn't support such complex systems anymore. Medieval Europe returned to basic fireplaces and open hearths. For centuries, people forgot how advanced Roman engineering had really been. Entire bath complexes with Hypocaust heating were buried, abandoned, or dismantled for building stone. It wasn't until archaeologists uncovered these ruins that the scale of the system became fully understood. And when researchers studied these ruins, they realized something surprising. The Hypocaust wasn't just clever architecture, it was a masterclass in energy efficiency. By distributing heat through massive thermal surfaces, the Romans minimized fuel waste. A single furnace could warm enormous rooms because the heat wasn't escaping instantly into the air. It was stored in stone and slowly released. That same concept appears today in passive solar buildings, thermal mass heating systems, and even some modern eco-homes.